The orbital defense grid around Sector 9 collapsed in 17 seconds. I watched from the observation deck of the Kryllian flagship as human missiles tore through our shields like they were made of silk. Commander Vex stood beside me, his breathing apparatus wheezing in what I had learned was his species' version of panic. "This is impossible," he muttered, pressing his sensory appendages against the viewport. "Our intelligence said Earth's military was scattered, divided. They were supposed to be arguing among themselves about resource allocation." I said nothing. What was there to say? We had all believed the reports. The humans were fractured, weak, recovering from internal conflicts. Easy targets. We were wrong. 3 days ago, our forward scouts had encountered a human colony on the edge of the Tyrannus system. A small settlement. Maybe 2,000 people. Half of them children. The attack was supposed to be clean, strategic. A message to Earth that the Kryllian Dominion was expanding, and they needed to accept their new place in the galactic hierarchy. No one was supposed to die. The standing order was intimidation, not extermination. But Commander Thax, leading the ground assault, had a different interpretation of his orders. Or maybe he just enjoyed the violence. I never got the chance to ask him. He died in the first wave of the human counterattack, vaporized by a weapon system we did not know existed. The colony had a school. 63 children, ages ranging from what humans called 6 to 14 years old. Thax's troops opened fire when the teachers tried to evacuate them. 41 children died before our own commanders managed to pull the assault team back. 2 days later, every human military vessel within 8 systems began moving. Not toward their own defensive positions, not to protect their worlds. They came for us. "Status report," Vex barked at the tactical officer, a young Kryllian named Polis, who looked like he might shed his skin from stress alone. "The human fleet has breached sectors 7, 8, and 9 simultaneously. They are using weapons we have never encountered. Our shields are ineffective. They are transmitting on all frequencies, but it is the same message, repeated." "What message?" I asked, though part of me already knew. Polis looked at me with all 4 eyes wide. "You attacked our children. Now she is coming with every soldier of Earth." She. I felt my core temperature drop. General Kira Matthews. I had heard the name in intelligence briefings. 42 years old by human standards, 20 years of military service. Participated in Earth's last major conflict. Something they called the Pacific Consolidation War. Decorated 17 times. Known for strategic brilliance and absolutely ruthless execution. She had 3 children of her own, 2 sons and a daughter. "They are hailing us," Polis said, his voice shaking. "Direct communication request from the lead human vessel." Vex turned to me. "As the diplomatic liaison, technically, this was my responsibility." I wanted to refuse. Every instinct told me that accepting this communication would change nothing. Save nothing. But I nodded. The viewport shimmered, and suddenly I was looking at her. Kira Matthews stood in what appeared to be the bridge of a warship. Behind her, I could see dozens of human officers working at stations, their faces set in expressions of cold determination. She wore a dark uniform with minimal decorations. Her hair, streaked with gray, was pulled back severely. Her eyes were the color of winter ice. "I am General Kira Matthews of the United Earth Defense Coalition," she said. Her voice was calm, almost conversational. That terrified me more than screaming would have. "You are Commander Vex of the Kryllian Dominion. Your forces attacked a civilian settlement in the Tyrannus system 72 hours ago. During that attack, 41 children were killed. I am here to discuss the terms of your surrender." Vex's breathing apparatus stuttered. "Surrender?" You attack us without provocation and demand our surrender? Without provocation? Matthews tilted her head slightly. Your troops murdered children, 41 of them. The youngest was 6 years old. Her name was Emma Larson, and she wanted to be a musician. The oldest was Jamal Foster, 14, top of his class in astrophysics. I can name all 41 if you would like. I have their files memorized. That was an unfortunate accident, Vex stammered. Commander Thax exceeded his authority. We have already disciplined. Commander Thax is dead, Matthews interrupted, as are 317 of the soldiers under his command. As will be every Kryllian military asset in this sector unless you agree to my terms in the next 2 minutes. I stepped forward. General Matthews, I am diplomatic envoy Soren. Perhaps we can negotiate a peaceful resolution. The incident at Tyrannus was tragic, but surely 41 children are dead, Envoy Soren, she said, turning those ice-cold eyes on me. There is no negotiation. There is only the choice I am offering Commander Vex. Surrender your forces, submit to war crimes tribunals, and accept Earth's terms for reparations. Or refuse, and I will demonstrate why humanity does not tolerate violence against our young. You cannot threaten the entire Kryllian Dominion over one incident, Vex shouted. We are a major power. We have allies. We have... The transmission cut to an external view. I could see the human fleet now, spreading across space like a net. There were hundreds of ships. No, thousands. How had they mobilized so quickly? Then I saw what they were doing. Each human vessel was launching smaller craft. Fighters, bombers, assault ships. They moved with perfect coordination, forming attack patterns that shifted and flowed like a living organism. And they were fast, impossibly fast. They are targeting our command ships, Polis reported, his voice barely above a whisper. All of them, simultaneously. Evasive maneuvers, Vex ordered. Deploy countermeasures. Launch our fighters. Sir, our fighters are not responding. There is some kind of interference. The first missile struck the flagship Vengeance, 3 ships to our port side. I watched the vessel's shields flare once, then collapse. The second missile penetrated the hull exactly at the command deck. The explosion was contained, surgical. The Vengeance went dark. They disabled it, I breathed. They did not destroy it. Matthews's face reappeared on the viewport. That was a demonstration. I can destroy every ship in your fleet without losing a single human life. Or I can disable them, as I just did to the Vengeance, and we can proceed to tribunals. You have 90 seconds to decide. Vex was shaking now, all pretense of authority crumbling. You are bluffing. No species would mobilize their entire military over 41 casualties. The cost alone. You do not understand humans, Commander, Matthews said softly. Those were not casualties. They were children. They were under our protection, and you killed them. She leaned forward slightly, and I saw something in her expression that made my blood run cold. It was not anger. It was certainty. Absolute, unwavering certainty. When someone hurts our children, she continued, we do not calculate cost. We do not measure proportional response. We come with everything we have, and we do not stop until justice is served. That is not a threat, Commander. That is a fact of human nature that your intelligence apparently failed to mention. 60 seconds, a voice announced from off-screen. I looked at Vex. The commander was frozen, his breathing apparatus gasping irregularly. Around us, alarms were sounding as more human fighters swarmed our defensive positions. Sir, Polis said quietly, we cannot win this engagement. Our weapons are ineffective. They are jamming our communications. Even if reinforcements were coming, they could not coordinate with us. Vex did not respond. 30 seconds, the voice announced. I made a decision. It was not my place, but someone had to. We surrender, I said loudly. Vex turned to stare at me. You have no authority. We surrender, I shouted again, directing my words at Matthews. On behalf of the Kryllian forces in this sector, we accept your terms. Please, no more killing. Matthews studied me for a long moment. Then she nodded. All human forces, stand down. Maintain targeting solutions, but hold fire. She looked at me. Envoy Soren, you have made a wise choice. Here is what happens next. You will power down your weapons systems. You will transmit your command codes. You will prepare to receive boarding parties. Any resistance will be met with immediate and overwhelming force. Any attempt to harm prisoners or destroy evidence will result in the destruction of the responsible vessel. Am I understood? Yes, I said. Understood. Good. Matthews's expression softened slightly, though her eyes remained hard. I want you to understand something, Envoy. This is not about revenge. This is about ensuring that no one ever makes the mistake your forces made again. When this is over, the entire galaxy will know that humanity protects its children. And anyone who forgets that lesson will face consequences they cannot imagine. The transmission ended. Vex collapsed into his command chair, defeated. Around us, officers began shutting down weapons systems. I could see human ships approaching on the tactical display. How did they do it? Polis asked quietly. How did they mobilize so fast? How did they know where we would be? I shook my head. They did not know where we would be. They did not need to. They simply sent ships everywhere. But the coordination, the weapons, we had intelligence suggesting they were still developing. They lied, I said simply. Or they allowed us to believe outdated information. It does not matter now. Through the viewport, I watched as the first human boarding craft attached to our hull. They were efficient, professional, showing no sign of the rage I would have expected. That was somehow worse than if they had come screaming for blood. These were not soldiers driven by emotion. They were carrying out a mission with cold precision. The airlock cycled. Human Marines entered our bridge, weapons ready but not firing. They moved like water, covering angles, securing positions. Their armor was black, functional, bearing no decorations except small flags on their shoulders, and insignia. Every single soldier wore a patch over their heart. It showed 41 stars arranged in a circle, 1 star for each child. The lead Marine, a woman with hard eyes and a scar across her jaw, approached Commander Vex. Commander Vex of the Kryllian Dominion, you are under arrest for war crimes, specifically the murder of 41 human children. You will be transported to Earth for tribunal. Do you understand? Vex nodded numbly. 2 Marines moved forward and secured his arms. They were not rough, but they were thorough. The scarred Marine turned to me. Envoy Soren, General Matthews has requested your presence aboard the flagship. Will you come voluntarily? Yes, I said. I will. She nodded. This way. As they led me through the corridors of my own ship, now occupied by human soldiers, I saw Kryllian crew members being processed, catalogued, treated with clinical efficiency. No one was being harmed, but everyone wore expressions of shock and fear. We had thought ourselves powerful. We had believed humans were weak, divided, focused on their own internal conflicts. We had forgotten a simple truth that every species with children should have known. Nothing is more dangerous than a mother protecting her young. And humanity had just shown us that, when their children were threatened, every human became that mother. Every soldier, every ship, every weapon. They came with everything. The shuttle trip to the human flagship took 20 minutes. I spent that time reviewing everything I knew about human psychology, human history, human conflicts, trying to understand what we had awakened. There were patterns. Humans were capable of remarkable cooperation when facing external threats. They could set aside centuries of internal conflict to unite against a common enemy. And they had a documented history of responding to attacks on civilians, especially children, with overwhelming force. We should have known. We should have studied harder. The flagship was called the Righteous Fury. The name alone should have warned us. General Matthews met me in a conference room. She was alone, except for 2 guards stationed by the door. She gestured to a chair across from her. "Sit, Envoy Soren." I sat. She studied me for a moment. "You surrendered your fleet. That took courage. Vex would have let everyone die rather than admit defeat." "It seemed the logical choice," I said quietly. "Logic." Matthews smiled without humor. "Yes, I suppose it was logical. You saw what we could do. You calculated the odds. You chose survival." She leaned forward. "But that is not why I wanted to speak with you." "Then why?" "Because you are going to help me prevent this from happening again." I blinked. "I do not understand." Matthews stood and walked to a wall display. With a gesture, she brought up images, children's faces, smiling, laughing, studying. 41 faces. "These are the children your forces killed," she said. "I want you to look at them. Really look." I did. They were so young, some barely more than hatchlings by my species' standards. "Emma Larson," Matthews said, pointing to a small girl with curly red hair. 6 years old. She played the violin. Her teacher said she had perfect pitch. She moved to another image. Marcus Tang, 8. Wanted to be a xenobiologist. He had a collection of rocks from every planet humanity had settled. Another. Yuki Sato, 12. Captain of her school's debate team. She wrote poetry. Matthews went through all 41. Every name, every face, every dream that had been extinguished. When she finished, she turned back to me. Her eyes were wet, but her voice remained steady. "Do you understand now, Envoy? These were not statistics. They were people. Children with futures, with potential, with families who loved them." "I understand," I said softly, "and I am sorry, for what little that is worth." "Sorry is a start," Matthews said, "but it is not enough. Here is what you are going to do. You are going to return to the Kryllian Dominion. You are going to testify at the tribunals, and then you are going to spend the rest of your life making sure that every species in this galaxy understands what happens when someone attacks human children." "You are releasing me?" "Eventually, after the tribunals, after reparations are established, after we have guarantees that this will never happen again." She sat down across from me, again. "But yes, I am releasing you, because I need someone who was there, someone who saw what we did, someone who can explain to your people and others exactly why we responded the way we did." I nodded slowly. "You want me to be a warning." "I want you to be a teacher," Matthews corrected. "I want you to help build a future where no child, human or otherwise, dies because someone calculated that violence was an acceptable diplomatic tool." She pulled up another image. This one showed a young woman in a military uniform. She had Matthews's eyes. "This is my daughter, Lieutenant Kira Matthews, Jr. She volunteered for this deployment. Do you know why?" "No. Because she has a son. My grandson. He is 7 years old. The same age as Marcus Tang was. Matthews's voice cracked slightly. She wanted to make sure that when he asks her what she did when children were murdered, she can tell him she stood up. She fought. She made sure those responsible faced justice. Matthews closed the image. That is what you need to understand about humans, Envoy Soren. We fight for the next generation, always, without exception, and we will cross any distance, pay any price, to protect them. I understand, I said, and I did. Perhaps for the first time, I truly understood what we had done. Not just the tactical mistake, but the moral one. Good. Matthews stood. You will be confined to quarters until the tribunals begin. You will have access to legal counsel. You will be treated fairly. That is more than your forces gave those children, but it is what separates us from you. The guards moved forward to escort me out. As I reached the door, Matthews spoke again. Envoy Soren, one more thing. I turned. If your people, or any other species, ever makes this mistake again, I will not be so restrained. This was mercy. Remember that. I nodded and left. In the quarters they assigned me, I sat and thought about everything that had happened. About the children who had died. About the human response. About what came next. And I realized that Matthews was right. This was mercy. Because if humanity ever decided to truly go to war, to abandon restraint and simply destroy, I could not imagine any force in the galaxy that could stop them. The tribunal chamber on Earth was nothing like I expected. I had imagined something grand, intimidating, designed to showcase human power and authority. Instead, they brought us to a converted assembly hall in Geneva, a city that apparently held significance in human diplomatic history. The room was simple, functional, with large windows that let in natural light. 41 chairs sat in the front row, each one empty, each bearing a name placard. Emma Larson, Marcus Tang, Yuki Sato, Jamal Foster, all 41 children, present in absence. Commander Vex sat 3 seats to my left, flanked by guards. He had not spoken since our capture, existing in some catatonic state that our medical evaluators said was psychological shock. 15 other Kryllian officers occupied the defendant area, all looking equally broken. I was the only one who had chosen to testify voluntarily, the only one who had accepted Matthews's offer. The judges entered, 3 humans, 2 aliens, a Torvian jurist known for her fairness, a Methodian scholar of interstellar law. The humans included a former general, a legal philosopher, and, surprisingly, a civilian teacher who had lost students in a terrorist attack decades prior. They wanted perspective, multiple views, not just military justice, but moral accounting. The lead judge, a silver-haired human woman named Justice Okoye, called the proceeding to order. We are here to determine responsibility and consequences for the attack on the Tyrannus settlement. This tribunal operates under the joint authority of the United Earth Coalition and the Interstellar Court of Justice. Our purpose is not revenge, but accountability and prevention. She looked directly at us. The accused have rights. They will be heard. Evidence will be examined. But let us be clear about what is not in dispute. 41 children died. That is fact. The question before us is why and what justice demands. The prosecution began presenting evidence, video recordings from the settlement, testimony from survivors, medical reports detailing how each child died. It was brutal, methodical, unflinching. A teacher named Robert Kim described trying to shield his students as Kryllian soldiers opened fire. He survived with 17 wounds. 6 of his students did not. A parent, Maria Santos, testified about finding her daughter's body in the school courtyard. 9 years old. shot twice while trying to run to safety. The Kryllian officers watched these testimonies with varying reactions. Some showed shame, others maintained blank expressions. Vex continued staring at nothing. When my turn came, I stood before the tribunal and told the truth. Everything. The intelligence failures, the arrogance, the assumption that humans were weak and divided. The orders that were supposedly about intimidation, not killing. Commander Thax's interpretation, or perhaps his eager exceeding of those orders. We did not understand humans, I concluded. We saw your internal conflicts and assumed fragility. We observed your debates about military spending and interpreted hesitation. We were catastrophically wrong. Justice Okoye leaned forward. Envoy Soren, you were not present at Taranis. You did not give the order to fire. Why are you here? Because I was part of the system that enabled it, I said. I wrote reports assuring our leadership that human response would be minimal, that Earth was too divided to mount effective resistance. I recommended expansion into human territory. Those recommendations created the conditions for Taranis. So you accept responsibility? I accept complicity, I clarified. I did not pull triggers, but I helped aim the weapon. The Torvian judge, Magistrate Helvin, spoke next. Her voice carried the weight of 6 centuries of legal experience. The Kryllian Dominion claims this was an accident, a rogue commander. Do you agree with that assessment? I paused. This was the moment Matthews had prepared me for. The truth that would either condemn my entire species or provide a path forward. No, I said. It was not an accident. It was the logical conclusion of a culture that prioritized expansion over ethics, that measured success in territory controlled rather than lives preserved. Commander Thax was not a rogue element. He was a faithful servant of a corrupted system. Gasps from the Kryllian section. Vex finally looked up, focusing on me with something approaching awareness. You betray us, he whispered. I tell the truth, I replied. Something we should have done before 41 children died. The tribunal recessed for deliberation. Guards escorted us to holding areas. I sat alone in my cell, watching Earth's sunset through a narrow window. The sky turned orange, then purple, then black. Stars emerged. Somewhere up there, Kryllian leaders were undoubtedly planning responses. Political maneuvering, damage control. They did not understand yet. This was not a political problem. This was existential. General Matthews visited me that evening. She brought food, which surprised me. Eat, she said, setting down a tray. The deliberations might take days. You need strength. I looked at the meal. Plant-based proteins, nutrient supplements calibrated for Kryllian biology. They had taken care to accommodate my needs. Why are you being kind to me? I asked. Matthews sat across from me. Because you chose truth over loyalty. That takes courage. And because anger without purpose is just destruction. I am angry, Envoy. Angrier than you can possibly imagine. But I channel that anger toward change, not cruelty. The other Kryllian officers hate me now. Probably. People generally hate those who force them to confront uncomfortable truths. She paused. My daughter asked to meet you. That startled me. Lieutenant Matthews? Why? Because she wants to understand. She is a soldier, but she is also a mother. She needs to know why people kill children, so she can teach her son how to build a world where it does not happen. I do not have answers that will satisfy her. Maybe not, but you have perspective. That is valuable. Matthews stood to leave, then stopped. The tribunal will rule tomorrow. Whatever happens, I want you to know that I believe you are genuine in your remorse. That matters." After she left, I ate the food and thought about Lieutenant Matthews, about her 7-year-old son, about all the human children who would grow up knowing that their species had responded to Tyrannus with overwhelming force. What kind of civilization would they build? One of fear and isolation, or one of strength tempered by principle? The next morning, they brought us back to the chamber. The empty chairs still sat in the front row. Someone had placed flowers on each one. A human custom, I had learned, honoring the dead. Justice Okoye stood. The room fell silent. "This tribunal has reviewed all evidence and testimony. We have consulted with legal scholars, military experts, and mental health professionals. We have considered questions of individual responsibility, systemic failure, and appropriate consequences." She looked at each defendant in turn. "Commander Vex, you had command authority. You failed to prevent unlawful killing. You failed to stop the attack when it became clear civilians were being targeted. You are guilty of war crimes and dereliction of duty. Sentence: life imprisonment under interstellar court supervision, with no possibility of parole." Vex did not react. Perhaps he had expected worse. Perhaps he had moved beyond caring. "Commander Thax is deceased, killed during combat operations. However, this tribunal finds him posthumously guilty of murder and crimes against sentient beings." She continued through the other officers. Some received prison sentences. Others were assigned to reparation work, rebuilding projects, educational initiatives. When she reached my name, I stood. "Envoy Soren, your case is unique. You were not at Tyrannus. You did not participate in violence. However, your intelligence assessments and recommendations created conditions that enabled the attack. You are guilty of negligent complicity." I waited for the sentence. "However, you have cooperated fully. You have shown genuine remorse. You have chosen truth over self-preservation. Therefore, this tribunal sentences you to 20 years of service. You will work with human and allied institutions to develop better intelligence protocols, cultural exchange programs, and conflict prevention systems. You will ensure that the lessons of Tyrannus are taught throughout the galaxy. You will be monitored, but not imprisoned. Do you accept these terms?" "I accept," I said immediately. Justice Okoye nodded. Then we moved to the matter of reparations and systemic reform. What followed was comprehensive. The Kryllian Dominion would pay financial compensation to victims' families. They would establish educational exchanges with Earth. They would reform their military training to include mandatory ethics instruction. They would submit to inspection protocols ensuring compliance. And they would erect a memorial on their home world. 41 pillars, each bearing a child's name. A permanent reminder. The tribunal concluded with a statement from the Methodian judge, Scholar Praxis, whose species had no concept of childhood as humans understood it. They matured rapidly, reaching full awareness within months of emergence. "I have studied this case extensively," Praxis said in his harmonic voice. "I have tried to understand the human reaction. My species does not experience extended nurturing periods. We do not have the same protective instincts toward our young. Yet I have come to recognize this as a fundamental strength of humanity." He gestured toward the empty chairs. These children represented potential. Knowledge not yet gained. Discoveries not yet made. Love not yet given. When they died, humanity lost not just 41 lives, but countless possible futures. The human response was not disproportionate. It was proportional to infinity, because that is what they lost. Infinite possibility. The chamber remained silent for a long moment. Then Justice Okoye struck her gavel. This tribunal is adjourned. May justice serve memory, and may memory serve prevention. Lieutenant Matthews found me afterward in the corridor outside the chamber. She was younger than her mother, maybe 30 human years. She wore civilian clothes, having taken leave to attend the proceedings. Envoy Soren, I am Kira. Lieutenant Matthews, your mother mentioned you might want to speak. Just Kira, please. I am off duty. She glanced around. Is there somewhere we can talk privately? They let us use a small conference room. Kira carried a tablet and a photo. This is my son, Devon, she said, showing me the image. A small human child with dark curly hair and a gap-toothed smile. He is 7, same age as Marcus Tang. He looks happy. He is, most of the time. Lately he has been having nightmares, though. Kira set down the photo. He heard about Tyrannus. Kids at his school were talking about it. Now he is afraid that aliens will attack his school. I am sorry. I do not want your apology, Kira said, not unkindly. I want to understand. You seem intelligent, educated, thoughtful. How did you convince yourself that attacking human settlements was acceptable? I considered how to answer honestly. We did not think of it as attacking settlements. We thought of it as geopolitical maneuvering, strategic positioning, abstract concepts that distanced us from reality. You dehumanized us. Yes, though we did not use that word. We told ourselves you were expanding too quickly, claiming too much territory, that you needed to understand your place in the larger galactic order. We created narratives that justified our actions. Kira nodded slowly. My mother does the same thing. When she plans military operations, she talks about targets and objectives and acceptable losses. She has to, or she could not do her job. But she also makes sure she never forgets that targets are people, that losses are lives. Your mother is remarkable. She is terrifying, Kira corrected, but she is also right about protection, about children. She looked at Devon's photo again. When I heard about Tyrannus, my first thought was, Devon. What if it had been his school? What would I have done? What would you have done? Exactly what my mother did. I would have come with everything. No hesitation, no mercy until justice was served. She met my eyes. Does that frighten you? Yes, I admitted, but I also understand it now. That capacity for absolute commitment is both humanity's greatest strength and greatest danger. Then help us manage it, Kira said. You are assigned to work on prevention systems. Make them effective. Because, if something like Tyrannus happens again, I do not think we will be as restrained. She stood to leave, then paused. Envoy Soren, thank you for telling the truth at the tribunal. Devon is going to grow up in a galaxy shaped by what happened here. I want him to live in a universe where truth matters, where people are held accountable, where children are safe. I will do everything I can to help build that universe. After she left, I sat with Devon's photo. A small boy with his whole life ahead of him, potential, possibility, future. That was what humans fought for. Not territory, not resources, not political advantage. They fought for tomorrows, for the chance that children like Devon would grow up, learn, love, create, and eventually have children of their own. It was so simple, so obvious. How had we missed it? The next 5 years were the most difficult of my life. I worked with human educators, military strategists, diplomats, and psychologists. We developed new intelligence protocols emphasizing cultural understanding over strategic assessment. We created exchange programs where young Kryllians lived with human families, and vice versa. I traveled to Tyrannus, stood in the rebuilt school, met survivors like Robert Kim, who had returned to teaching despite his wounds. "Why did you come back?" I asked him. "Because the children need teachers," he said simply. "And because I refuse to let fear win." I visited the memorial garden they had created. 41 trees, each planted in memory of a child. Small plaques told brief stories. Emma's love of music, Marcus's rock collection, Yuki's poetry. A human concept called closure was supposed to come from such places. I am not sure anyone truly found it. But there was peace. Quiet acknowledgement that lives had mattered. General Matthews retired after 3 years. I attended her ceremony. She gave a speech about service, sacrifice, and the responsibility that came with power. "We responded to Tyrannus with overwhelming force," she said. "That was necessary. But it cannot be our only response to every threat. We must also build, educate, connect. Otherwise, we become what we fought against." She looked directly at me when she said it. A reminder, a challenge. Kira took a position teaching military ethics at the academy. She brought Devon to class sometimes, letting cadets see why their training mattered, why rules of engagement existed, why protecting civilians was not just policy, but moral imperative. Commander Vex died in his 3rd year of imprisonment. Natural causes, the report said. I think it was despair. He never accepted what he had done, never moved past denial. The other Kryllian officers served their sentences, some genuinely reformed. Others simply waited for release, unchanged. The Kryllian Dominion implemented the required changes reluctantly. But slowly, gradually, a new generation emerged. Young Kryllians who had lived on Earth, studied human history, made human friends. They returned home with different perspectives. Change came incrementally. That was frustrating. I wanted transformation overnight, but General Matthews had warned me about that. "Systems change slowly," she said. "People change even slower. Be patient, be persistent, and never forget why you are doing this." 10 years after Tyrannus, I received an invitation, a reunion of sorts. The families of the 41 children gathered annually on the anniversary. They had invited me to attend. I almost declined. What right did I have to intrude on their grief? But Maria Santos, who had lost her daughter, sent a personal message. "Come. We want you to see what we have built from ashes." The gathering took place at the Memorial Garden on Tyrannus. Families came from across human space. Some brought new children, born after the attack, life continuing despite loss. They had established a foundation, the 41 Initiative, dedicated to protecting children throughout the galaxy. Not just human children, all children. They ran educational programs, funded medical research, provided resources to settlements on frontier worlds, all in memory of those who had died. Robert Kim spoke at the ceremony. "Grief is not something you overcome. It is something you carry. But you can choose what to do with that weight. We choose to build, to protect, to ensure meaning comes from loss." I met Devon, now 17, taller than his mother, studying xenobiology at university. He wanted to understand alien species, he told me, to build bridges instead of walls. "My grandmother showed me what humans could do when we are angry," he said. "My mother taught me what we should do instead. I want to be part of the solution." He had never known the children who died, but he carried their memory. They had shaped his world, his education, his values. Legacy, humans called it. The ripples that extend beyond a single life. As the sun set over the memorial garden, I stood among the families and felt something I had not expected. Hope. Not because the pain had faded. It had not. These people still grieved. Would always grieve. But they had chosen to transform that grief into purpose. To honor the dead by protecting the living. That was the lesson of Tyrannus. Not just that humanity would respond with overwhelming force to protect their children. That was important, yes, a deterrent, a warning. But the deeper lesson was that humans could take the worst tragedy and forge it into positive change. They could stare into darkness and choose to light candles. 20 years after the attack, my sentence complete, I requested permission to continue my work. The tribunal granted it. I had found my purpose. Not redemption, exactly. Some things cannot be redeemed. But contribution. Adding something positive to the universe that had suffered because of my failures. General Matthews, now quite elderly, attended my continuation ceremony. She moved slowly, aided by a cane, but her eyes remained sharp. "You have done good work, Envoy Soren," she said. "The galaxy is safer because of your efforts." "It will never be enough," I replied. 41 children are still dead. "No, it will never be enough, but it is something, and something is better than nothing." She squeezed my shoulder with surprising strength. "Keep building. That is how we honor them." She died 2 years later. Kira scattered her ashes in the memorial garden, adding her mother to the place that had defined her final decades. The last time I visited Tyrannus, Devon was there with his own child, a daughter, 3 years old. She ran through the memorial garden, laughing, touching the trees, asking questions in that relentless way young humans have. "Who were they, Papa?" she asked, pointing at the plaques. "They were children, like you," Devon said, kneeling beside her. "They died a long time ago. We remember them so we can keep other children safe." "Did the bad people get punished?" "Yes, and some of them, like my friend Soren here, learned to be better." The girl looked at me with curious eyes. "You were bad?" "I made very serious mistakes," I told her honestly. "And I have spent many years trying to help make sure no one makes them again." "Good," she said simply, then ran off to examine a flower. Devon smiled. She has her great-grandmother's directness. The galaxy is better for it. We stood in comfortable silence, watching his daughter play among the memorial trees. Those trees had grown tall now, strong, providing shade and beauty. Life flourishing in ground watered by tears. "Do you think we have succeeded?" Devon asked quietly. "Has it been enough?" I thought about the question, about the systems we had built, the protocols implemented, the lives potentially saved through prevention. "I think we have changed the probability," I said. "We have made future Tyrannus incidents less likely. Not impossible, but less likely. And we have ensured that if they happen, the response will be swift, just, and focused on prevention. That is all we can do, I suppose. Change the odds, build better futures. Yes, and remember, always remember." Devon's daughter came running back, demanding we push her on the swing set that had been installed at the garden's edge. A place where children could play, could live, could be children. As I pushed her, listening to her laughter, I thought about all the children who would never laugh again. Emma, Marcus, Yuki, Jamal, all 41. But I also thought about Devon's daughter, about the children on Earth, on Kryllia, on 1,000 worlds who would grow up safer because of what had been learned at such terrible cost. That was the bargain. The exchange that could never balance. 41 lives lost. Millions potentially saved. It would never be equal. Never be fair. but it was something. And as General Matthews had taught me, something was better than nothing. The sun set over Tyrannus. The memorial trees cast long shadows. Devon's daughter laughed as she swung higher and higher, reaching for stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky, reaching for tomorrow. And in that moment, I understood what humans had been protecting all along. Not just their children, not just their species. They were protecting possibility itself, the chance that future would be better than past, that children would grow, that light would follow darkness. That was worth fighting for, worth everything.